We are Legion.
Judge Larry Willis has done to me several times.
This judge is corrupt. Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court.
What's really sickening is when they laugh at you. They laugh at you in their own courtroom and they mock you in front of you. And that's what Judge Larry Willis has done to me several times.
This judge is corrupt.
Okay, and you know, you said you don't hold you don't hold back. And on AJC Radio, we believe in calling names. We didn't have to tell you that tonight, Kaylee. And that's important, that we know who these judges are, that we speak out against them. And right now, I want to go to Russell. And Mimi, we're coming right to you. But Russell, tell the folks tonight, this is unbelievable. And you're talking about three people on here, 4 people who are fighting and speaking out against this corruption. But we're talking about families in the thousands, Lisa, who are suffering this same abuse across this country. Russell, tell us a little bit about your situation. I was really heartbroken with what you had told me of what they had done to you. Share a little bit with the people about your situation and the corruption with Child Protective Services.
Well, let me first start off by saying that my situation and my case is in the state of Virginia as well. It's in Norfolk County, and it's Judge Larry Willis Sr.'s courtroom in Chesapeake, Virginia. So there's something definitely going on within the state of Virginia about all the corruption that's going on in the J&DR courts there. Like I was telling you before, back in 2010, when my wife absconded to the state of Virginia, where she was harbored by them, she disappeared for 2 years. And I got a letter one year from the IRS stating that, she had signed my name to the taxes, and that's how I found her. In 2013, I filed for custody, divorce and stuff like that. And during that time, she was living with her boyfriend, William Bruno Jr., who was obviously beating on my children. They were afraid of this man. And the summer of 2013, my wife and I, we got a hold of my ex-wife, and, we were trying to establish custody and stuff like that. I was granted a couple weeks visitation. During those weeks, my children had reported to me, the horrors of being abused and hit by this man repeatedly. I had called Child Protective Services on him, and they did nothing. Well, after the custody case was going on, I was given 8 weeks and every other vacation, like Christmas vacation, Thanksgiving and stuff like that. One Thanksgiving I had got them, and they had told me more about the abuse. My son told me that he was slapped around and hit and punched because he didn't have clean laundry, and he was getting up and going to school and had to dig through dirty laundry to go to school. And my daughter told me that her mother's boyfriend watches her get dressed. She feels uncomfortable around him, and he's touched her inappropriately several times. Run his hand across her buttocks and across her chest. And this is something a 10-year-old girl doesn't lie about. And she reported this to me. I reported this to Child Protective Services, and they did nothing about it in the state of Virginia. They brushed it off. So when I got them, I had taken them back to Ohio, where I was currently living at the time, and I called the sheriff's department there. The sheriff's department recommended that I get him seen at a children's hospital in the area. I made the appointment, and Child Protective Services in Virginia had found out, and they had called this children's hospital, and they had canceled my appointment. We went to show up. They told me that the appointment was canceled, and they didn't want to testify in court because they didn't want to have to go to Virginia and waste their time and money. I was livid. My wife was angry, and there was nothing done. A couple days later, we get a letter in the mail stating that we have to return the kids because of the jurisdiction that Virginia retained over them. We drove back to Virginia, and during the 10-hour ride that we were going back, I was on the phone to the Child Protective Services workers who told me they had an appointment set up at the Norfolk Children's Hospital. Well, we get to the Norfolk Children's Hospital, and there was no appointment ever made. I get served with papers there, and my children are forcibly taken from me. The CPS worker there, the next day in court, had lied all about it. I had basically been coerced and lied to bring the kids back into the state of Virginia. During court, I mean, there was no due process, and there was obviously abuse of powers going on there. The guardian ad litem, Katie Brown, she was in cahoots with my ex-wife and the Department of Social Services workers there about what was going on. I had all my custody taken away from me and given to my ex-wife. She's now in control of it. I get 10 minutes per child on the phone every week when she decided to have them call me. I have a no-contact order. The attorney that I had hired, she purposely lost the case because she was in bed with the judge. There's just countless things that have gone on throughout the 4 years that I was battling for custody of my children there. It's just one big fiasco. It's one big lie. I've tried contacting the state of Virginia's ACLU. They're afraid to do anything because the judge in my case is the State Bar Association president, and they're afraid of this. But I talk to on social media outlets that have all had the same judge, and they say the same thing. Everybody's afraid to go up against him because of the things that he does. Yeah, I was detained for 10 days for speaking constitutional law in his court because it was in contempt and violation of what he thought, you know, I was speaking about. I had 2 attorneys tell me to shut up when I started talking about that, and I just don't know how to convey it any better. They violated me. They violated my children. There's a lot of other custody issues that have gone on in there too.
You know what, Russell? This is just unacceptable. You know, Cliff, we talk a lot about the criminal proceedings with judges and the travesty in this nation in criminal court. Can you explain to me and to our listeners, Cliff, how in the world do we now show the same corruption with our children? With Russell and Kaylee and Mimi, which we're going to hear from her in a moment. And Mimi, we're going to make this point, and I'm coming to your story. How is this possible in America?
Yeah, this is absolutely sickening. You know, I'm sitting here listening to Russell, and how do you, as a so-called Child Protective Services agent or whoever it was, call up the children's hospital? I mean, you're there. It doesn't matter who has jurisdiction at this point. If these kids were, I mean, if you were in California, if you were in New York, at this point, you have gotten stories from your children that there's abuse going on. It doesn't matter about jurisdiction. It's about the children. Let them be seen by the doctors that are there at hand while things are fresh on their mind. It's like, I mean, it takes enough for a child to be able to say, okay, I'm willing to talk to a stranger about what happened to me. Let it come out. Let it happen to have those children, and then say, okay, well, now bring them on a 10-hour ride, and we have another appointment set up that we set up in our jurisdiction. That is sickening, and what it shows is the entire process is corrupt. The judge is on the side of the Protective Services agent. They know that they're not going to get any kickback from the judge, any type of lashing for things that they did wrong, and then the judge ignores your plea. This is
wow.
It leaves you speechless.
And folks, if you want to get in on
what's really sickening is when they laugh at you. They laugh at you in their own courtroom and they mock you in front of you. And that's what Judge Larry Willis has done to me several times.
So the judge
and Judge Barry in the courtroom where I was, he's sitting on the bench and he's falling asleep.
Wow. And how are you, that's falling, ladies and gentlemen, hold that thought. I'm going to come to Mimi here in a moment. How do you fall asleep at the wheel?
That's what Judge Barry was doing. He was falling asleep in many court hearings when I was sitting there, and the CPS worker and the attorneys, they're looking at each other, signaling each other on what to do, and he's sitting there on the bench closing his eyes and his head bobbling back and forth.
And if that is the response from a judge, regarding our children, we have a major problem in this country. How do you feel? Yes.
Because the reason I say that is because everything is already coerced. Everything is already made and set up and planned to go before the parents come in the courtroom. That's their racketeering.
And it was Ronnie, was that you or Russell asking for a comment?
That was me. My wife, she was a mental health tech in the Air Force for quite some years, and she's very skilled at what she does. When she was talking with my daughter would talk to her. Obviously a woman thing going on there, but my daughter was very comfortable talking with my wife, and she would convey to her all sorts of issues that were going on in the house. And when my wife and I were talking to the guardian ad litem, she just didn't like my wife, and she wouldn't listen to her, and they wouldn't let her testify in court to the things that were told by my daughter to her. And this is from a lady that is used to dealing with people with post-traumatic stress disorders, combat fatigues and stuff like that from people in the military, but they wouldn't take any of her testimony that was given by my daughter into any consideration. They just sloughed it off, laughed it off, and swept it under the rug.
When a judge acts out of his jurisdiction, he acts on his own discretion and out of his own oath of office.